everyone, Haley here from The Foiled Plan. If you are new here, welcome. My videos mostly consist of DIY crafts, design videos, as well as some business related content. So if that sounds like something that you'd enjoy, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss out on my videos. Now, I originally filmed this tutorial for Auntie Tay's YouTube channel for her Holla DIY series, but I thought I would share it here as well, just in case any of my subscribers maybe missed it. If you aren't following Auntie Tay, I'll put her link in the description box below because she has some great content. Okay, that is totally enough rambling. Let's get into the tutorial video. Alright, so here's what we're going to need to make these alcohol ink coasters. To protect ourselves, we want to use some gloves. I'm using nitrile gloves. I'm using a protective mask for any fumes. Hey, so I'm just in the middle of re-editing this video and I just wanted to pop in because in this video I was using a specific type of mask. This is the pink one you'll see. You would have already seen, I just showed you. But I actually use a different mask now and I get a lot of questions about which mask it is that I use, so I just thought I would show you right now in this glamorous setting. So this is the mask that I use now, and it actually has organic vapor protection, which is something that you definitely want if you are working with epoxy resin. I still have the box that it came in, which looks like this. And I can't really see it. It's probably also backwards on the screen. But it is the 3M 6001. So it is a professional paint respirator. And I'll link it in my Amazon shop and I'll just post the direct link to it in the description box below because that's where I purchased it from. I want to say it was around $50 or so Canadian, but it's worth it because you're protected. And this is all I use now. Also, make sure you're in a well-ventilated space. I'm not sure if I mentioned that in the video because, well, I haven't got that far in the video yet. So yes, ventilated space. Also make sure you're wearing a good respirator. A lot of people also wear safety goggles. Myself, I wear glasses, and the way this mask sits, like, pushes the glasses like right up close to my chubby little cheeks. So you can wear safety goggles if you so choose. I always wear gloves also, and then some people wear like full long sleeves. I've been working with epoxy resin for a while now, so I am pretty confident with it, but especially if you are just starting out, make sure you're wearing the proper PPE, personal protective equipment. Okay. Let's get back to the video because I'm sure you're done looking at this face. I'm using a 2-part epoxy resin. You can use whatever kind is your favorite. And then I'm also going to be using some cups for measuring, a popsicle stick for stirring, some spray alcohol so that I can get some pretty cool cells in the epoxy. I'm also going to be using my Auntie Tay craft mat, my Recollections heat tool, a silicone mold that's from Amazon. You want to make sure you get something that is shiny on the inside because if it's matte, then your coasters are not going to come out shiny. I hope that makes sense. And then I'm also going to be using various alcohol inks. I purchased all of these from Michael's. I'm using the Resin and then also some of the Pinata alcohol inks.
I decided that I wanted to do kind of two different color schemes. I used one that was white, pink, and purple, and then the other one was going to be black, white, and gold. So to get started, I'm just gonna put my gloves on to make sure that I'm protected, and then also throw my mask on as well. So now that I am protected, I am ready to start mixing my epoxy. So I'm gonna take part one, which is the resin, and I'm going to fill up one of these 1 ounce cups. And then I will take part two and I will fill up the exact same amount in the second cup. Epoxy works on a 1-to-1 ratio, so however much you have in part one, you want the exact same amount in part two. Once you have part one and part two measured and poured out, you can then combine them together into 1 cup that you use for mixing. You can use a popsicle stick like I'm using here to scrape the bottom to make sure you've got every little bit out of the cup and you're not wasting any. Then you want to take your popsicle stick and start the stirring process. So with epoxy, make sure you stir nice and slow. This video is sped up fairly quickly, so it looks like I'm stirring quick, but in reality, I am not. The quicker you move, the more bubbles you're gonna have, and that's just not going to give us as nice of a result when we end up pouring the epoxy. So nice and slow. It's gonna take some time. It looks kind of cloudy when you first start and you see a bunch of like striations, however you say it. You see a bunch of lines in there and it looks cloudy. So just keep stirring and stirring nice and slow until you get that clear consistency. Then we're ready to actually pour the epoxy into the molds. Now, don't stress out if you do end up having some air bubbles because we can use our heat tool to get those out after we've poured the epoxy. So now I'm taking my mold and I'm just gonna decide which spots I'm gonna work with, and I've decided I'm gonna start on one end and then work to the other and see how far I get with the amount of epoxy I have. And I'm just sort of using the popsicle stick to spread it around. And like I said before, don't stress if there are air bubbles because we can take care of those. Just spread out your epoxy evenly throughout the mold. I ended up only having enough epoxy to do 2. So if you want to do more than 2 at once, maybe mix 1.5 or 2 ounces of part 1 and 2 ounces of part 2 to have enough to fill the entire mold. Make sure you're using that popsicle stick to scrape out the bottom of the cup, and then go ahead and use your heat tool to remove some of those bubbles that may have surfaced. If you notice some large ones, you can use the popsicle stick to kind of pop those. But now it pretty much looks clear. I don't really see too many issues, which is gonna be good for the final product. And now we're ready for the fun part, which is the alcohol ink. Man, I am just sitting here editing this and I still get excited about it. This was actually my first time ever doing something like this, and clearly I was so excited I kept hitting my camera. But so with the Pinata Gold that I'm using, it tends to settle and separate because it's a metallic finish. So just make sure that you give it a little bit of a shake so it incorporates before you start to add little droplets. Now I'm going to start with the far end, and I'm just sort of placing droplets of alcohol ink wherever. It can be totally random, no rhyme or reason to what you're doing, just sort of throw them on there. And the neat thing about epoxy is the way it looks right now, as it's curing over the 8-hour curing process, it's gonna change so much that it's gonna look completely different by the time it's finished. Then I'm just gonna take my spray bottle of alcohol and just give it a little spritz, and you see as soon as the alcohol hits the alcohol ink, instantly you get these cool little funky cells and things start to move around. Then I decided to move on to my next coaster, and I added the black, white, and gold colors, and basically just did the same thing as I did with the first one. No rhyme or reason to where I was placing things, all over the place, using my alcohol every now and then to add some little spritzes. Spritzes, is that a word? I don't know. If it's not, it is now. Just keep adding and moving around until you're happy with the result. And then once you're done, all you have to do is set it and walk away. It just needs to sit like this and cure. Now, when I make epoxy tumblers, I usually let my cup sit for 8 hours, and that works for these, but they're still kind of malleable and bendy if you only leave them for 8 hours. So I would recommend leaving them like the rest of the day, potentially overnight. I did this at about, I want to say like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then I left them until about lunchtime the next day, and then I demolded them. This is what the coasters looked like when I decided I was done adding any more alcohol inks to them. But like I mentioned in the beginning, with epoxy, as it's curing, the alcohol ink is going to move around, and these are likely going to look quite a bit different than they do right now. So let's see what they look like when I demolded them. Alright, so I came back the next day and I picked up my coasters and just felt around to make sure that they were in fact ready to be demolded, and they were. So I just sort of pulled the mold away from the coaster around the edges, and that allowed it to just sort of pop right out of the mold, and look how cool they turned out. I think it's interesting to see the difference from one side to the other, and I was just really happy with the final product. Which one do you guys like better? The pink, purple, and white, or the black, white, and gold? Let me know in the comments below. Alright, that is all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed this DIY resin coaster tutorial with some safety tips thrown in. I want to give a big thank you to Auntie Tay for allowing me to join in on your holiday DIY series last December. Make sure you head over to Auntie Tay's channel so you don't miss out on any of her awesome content. As always, helpful links will be in the description box below, and I will see you guys next Friday. That's all I'm gonna say. Bye!